Sports conversation the way it ought to be. This is Jeff Allen Sports Talk.
Welcome back to another edition of the show, and I am pleased to have on this program for the first time. He's been a guest on my 2 Year Point show with the Sons of UCF. We welcome Chris Boyle of the Daytona Beach News Journal, and he is coming to us live from Camping World Stadium, where some hot soccer action is taking place. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Some would say too hot soccer, particularly Chelsea coach Enzo Maresca with the games up in Philadelphia complaining about the heat wave. And it's not any less forgiving down here. I can say, having walked around the perimeter of the stadium to go pick up my credential office, it's going to be a hot one. 9 o'clock kickoff tonight between LAFC and Flamengo.
Yeah, well, we'll get to some thoughts on the Club World Cup in just a little bit. Want to do first, of course, you cover the UCF Knights for the Daytona Beach News Journal, and wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, where are we at in this offseason? How do you feel about the team? What direction they're going in? What's your take on that?
Well, I think the spring was tough to kind of get a gauge as to how good they really are. I mean, obviously, that you're not going to get to see a great deal of practice time. They didn't do a traditional spring game, so they didn't. It wasn't as competitive and as eye-opening as maybe it would be in past years. And even so, you're only going to see kind of the vanilla things as it is. I do think UCF has potential to be a bowl caliber team. I think that's certainly going to be the goal. I know if they make a bowl game this year, then Scott Frost gets an additional guaranteed year on his contract, make it a 6-year deal. So that is obviously a bit of a carrot at the end of the stick, so to speak. And for this team, I think they want to prove that they were that they underachieved last year, that they have more talent than people are giving them for. This is a big opportunity for Taven Jackson to be a full-time starter potentially for the first time in his college career after prior stints at Tennessee and Indiana. It's a big opportunity for Miles Montgomery to carry the load after R.J. Harvey produced, 2 of the most productive seasons in the history of the school for a running back. It's an opportunity for a lot of these wide receivers to step in and become the man. Not a single player on this team at the wide receiver position caught a pass for UCF last year. It's an opportunity for Alex Grinch to carry the chip on his shoulder after a fairly, disappointing 2-year tenure as defensive coordinator at USC, to be again among the sport's best assistants. So there's a lot of guys, and to top it off, this is an opportunity for Scott Frost to change the narrative. A guy that had immense success here, that that had the bowl eligible season his first year, 13-0 the second year, didn't translate that success over in Nebraska, was fired in his 5th season, just 3 games in. Hasn't been in charge of a team since then, since 2022. And it's a big chance for him to kind of change what people think about him and show that it can work here at UCF for the long term in a big conference.
And of course, we're seeing a lot of, news about commitments. And of course, I know we spoke a couple of months ago when all the portal action was happening and things like that. And of course, now I have come to really distaste the word committed because what are commitments in college football these days?
There is no such thing. There's if you show up and play the game by the time the season rolls around. Recruiting has had some ups and downs this summer. They've gotten a handful of players into their class. I think when kids shut it down and stop visiting, that's when you can call them committed. And so there are a few guys that UCF have in their current 2026 class that, got their opportunity to commit here and didn't go anywhere else. But, it's an opportunity to shop around, figuratively and literally. So a chance to find the best possible opportunity to see who's going to provide the most from a educational, athletic, and financial perspective. I think, I think the biggest thing people need to understand is don't take it personally if a kid changes his commitment, right? I think you're not so much committing to a school as you are to a team. We're getting more and more away from amateur athletics and more towards professional athletics. So if a guy wants to be a part of the team and is valued as part of the team as opposed to being, a part of the university, I think that's maybe more the way to look at this going forward.
All right, of course, today was a big day because the UCF Knights unveiled new uniforms for this upcoming season. And first thing I'm glad is I'll finally be able to see the numbers again. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah. I won't provide as, much of a take on these as Christian Simmons would, and I hope he's watching. I do think they're nice. I think the block lettering and the font that they chose for the numbers is a good look. At the same time, I think the space uniforms are more the judge of where we really want to score for creativity. You want to provide a clean look that's classic, that kind of abides by what people expect, and at the same time, maybe give a little bit of a surprise. And I think, like I said, I think those numbers in particular caught people's eyes earlier today when the uniform release happened.
Yes, at least visible, and of course, there's always the chance they will unveil something else in addition. Hopefully, some alternate colors. I'm still a big anthracite guy. I really did like that look when we had that, from the national championship season. So
right,
that'd be kind of pretty cool if they bring some of that. And gold. I know there's people out there. You either hate the gold or you love the gold, right? Gold pants would work with this stuff.
Yeah.
I think as a nice accent.
I think more so than gold uniforms. Having watched the NHL the last handful of years, it still kind of takes some sight adjustments whenever I watch a Vegas home game because they've got those glittery gold uniforms. I don't think it really works as a primary jersey color, much more so as an accent, whether it's to black or to pewter or to another variation of gray. I think it's a much better complementary color than a main one.
Yeah, of course, that wasn't the most recent new uniform selection. The Orlando Magic brought out fresh oldies, if you will, but go back to the pinstripe days, to much of their better look. And I thought a big step up in their. They're
much better. They are much better. I think it's a good mix of old meets new. I personally love the original, late 80s, early 90s, from Terry Catledge to Greg Turner to Shaquille O'Neal to Dennis Scott, that era. Like, honestly, you got it right the first time and you really should have never messed with it.
Yep.
But, there's always a dollar to be made somewhere, right? So I think the fact that they acknowledge that that's the best way that they should look, and to do something kind of in the middle, something forward thinking, but also that harkens back to the past, I think that's the right way to go about it.
Yeah, no question about that. And of course, the Magic will have a new man wearing that uniform. Desmond Bain, of course, was traded for. The Magic, injuries really killed this season for them. And they want to be past the first round of the playoffs. What do you think about the addition of Bain? Is he a guy who will help him get over the hump there?
So there's two ways to look at the addition of Desmond Bain. I'm going to take the more cynical look first because I disagree with it. 4 first-round draft picks on paper is a steep price to pay for anybody, let alone a player that's never made the All-Star game. A complimentary piece on a team that really was kind of in the Western Conference's position of the Magic, where they were fighting for the playoffs and not getting past the first round. With all that being said, and they also gave up Cole Anthony, who I think had some productive moments and was, to me, a guy that really set the tone as far as the culture of the team is concerned. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I thought, obviously didn't work out the first year. Is more used to balance the books here, I think, in the trade than anything else from a salary cap standpoint. I like Desmond Bain. I think, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend that I'm an expert on the NBA. I watch it to a degree, somewhat regularly. I follow along with the league. The times I've watched Bain, I've been very impressed. You look at his stats from last year, 19.2 points a game, 39.2% shooting from three-point range, 5.3 assists, which I believe is a career high. And that was kind of in a down year for him. Bain's career numbers He's a 41% three-point shooter, and this is the team that was dead last in the NBA in three-point percentage last year. So if you're trying to address a need with the best available player, I don't really think there were many better options than Bane. Certainly not in the free agent market where you're not giving away assets. And how many teams are really looking to trade away knockdown three-point shooters and transition in from different spots on the court? So I think overall you had to. This is the window, right? The window is right here for the Magic. They have two young stars in Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Jalen Suggs will be back from injury next year. Jason Tatum may miss the entire season for the Celtics next year. Tyrese Halliburton just unfortunately tore his Achilles tendon in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. So who knows how that affects the Pacers next year. The Knicks are going to have a new coach. The East is there to be won, and now they have a legitimate four top options, and they can space the floor out a lot better now than they could a year ago. They've got guys that can handle the ball. They've got guys who can play without it. They can be a top-end defensive team with Suggs on the floor. I love the trade. I think it's a really big swing. Now, it also could be a big swing and a miss. We're not going to, I'm not going to say it's going to guarantee the Magic anything, but if you're a Magic fan, I think personally you should be excited that they took a big swing, that they're trying to get the right kind of player in here to fill out and complement what they already have, which is a good core.
Yeah, you definitely would rather they take a swing than not. I think
all the talk had been about how they refused to make trade offers and acknowledge that they needed to go out there and add a piece. So they went out there and did it without an asset last year by signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who again on paper looked like the right kind of player to bring in, and it did not work out. So now, you got to try something different, and they were in a position where I think they kind of had to go out there and find someone that could grow with this group.
Yeah. Of course, you brought up Tyrese Halliburton and, of course, the Pacers and Oklahoma City in the NBA Finals. One that I guess I just heard today did not stack up ratings-wise as the league would have hoped, but certainly an entertaining 7-game series. And small market teams getting to compete for the title. I think that I know the networks want the marquees. I kind of like seeing new blood in this situation.
Yeah, I think part of it too is that I don't feel like they're marketing the stars on these mid-market teams very well either. Like, you think about the old days where you couldn't avoid, even when LeBron James played Cleveland, he was still, universally known. Shaquille O'Neal in Orlando, universally known. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the MVP of the NBA this year, and I don't feel like they market him and guys of his ilk well enough at all to really draw the ratings, to draw you in. Whereas I think the NHL did a much better job of that this year. You got the defending champs to go head-to-head against Connor McDavid, the biggest star in the league. And they're, I don't know exactly what the ratings did, but I can assure you that the on-ice competition and the vibe around the Stanley Cup Finals was a lot higher and a lot more interesting than it was around the NBA Finals. And a lot of that, again, Game 7 really was more or less decided in the first quarter when you lose a player of Halliburton's quality. It was just it felt like that really took the wind out of the sails, right? The Pacers were in that game for about a half, but eventually it catches up to you. So I hope for the NBA's sake that we don't see the league kind of suffer because teams like Oklahoma City and Minnesota and Indiana are having their moment to go after the title. Because, growing up in Orlando and working in Orlando, obviously if you're a Magic fan, you want that to be you next year. You want to be that team that crashes the party. You want everyone to feel like they have a chance. To have this many different teams get a piece of the pie, it should be good for the league. But, the league also thrives when the Lakers, the Celtics, and so on and so forth are at the top of the heap. And there's it's almost reminiscent of wrestling where you want to cheer against somebody as opposed to necessarily cheering for somebody.
Yeah. Well, of course, with the Halliburton injury, so third player that goes out in the recent playoffs with Achilles, is that just an anomaly, or does that speak to something different? It's just kind of odd how that injury has cropped up all of a sudden.
I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV. But I do think I don't. It's a tendon, right? Like it's something you really got to explode off of, and it's something that only has, it snaps when you push it to the limit. We're talking about now 100 some games into an NBA season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily more than misfortune. I think it's certainly an issue that is by association. I think more so than like based in cold hard facts of what can be done. But yeah. I don't know. That's just I'm not going to necessarily say that I know the right answer to that. But it is unfortunate to lose two of the best players in the NBA in key moments to the same injury.
Yeah. I had a buddy of mine give me this theory today. It was something along the lines of, maybe, because players seem to be ramped up all the time. Now we have all this load management. You have all these gaps in the schedule in the playoffs. Why they're playing every 3 or 4 days is kind of an issue. It could be because they're used to ramping it up all the time that the tendon stays strong, and because you're not, does it become weak? Here I am trying to play a doctor, right?
Yeah.
But it kind of made me think a little bit.
I don't know if it's load management. I don't think rest is a bad thing. I think, you're more likely to suffer injury by overexertion and by, pushing yourself to the limit than you are by ample amounts of rest in between. That's just my opinion, but
yeah. Just an interesting thought that, just strange how in this playoffs all the players had the jersey number of 0. So that it was a little bit of an ironic twist there. So recently concluded the College World Series. LSU is the national champions. And, of course, Coastal Carolina had a great run, had a 26-game winning streak going into the championship set. And, of course, it was just a bit of a brutal last game for Coastal Carolina with their coach Kevin Schnall getting ejected right out the get-go. What did you think of that scenario? Is this overzealous umpiring? Is this, is Schnall in the wrong because he was argumentative? I mean, I don't think you can deny that either. What was your take on that situation?
I don't know. I always get amused by the rapport between coaches and umpires. You would think that these guys, know the stakes, right? Like, don't be part of the story if you're the umpire. It's like, it's like journalism 101. Never make yourself the story. I feel like if you're the umpire, just unless something is being completely and utterly said that's unforgivable, let the man say his piece and move on. I guess it was a case of being wrongly accused for bumping the umpire. That's what Schnall had said, that wasn't justified. And, I don't know. I do think in a game of that magnitude, you gotta let them play, right? You want to see players decide the outcomes. I think you got to kind of have some sort of grace period or grace of allowing it.
Yeah.
Up to a point. Like I said, if it's something just like there's black and white, it is what it is. But I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, if he calls him a blankety blank, that you cross a line there. But that umpire that fell, that was a flop worthy of LeBron James, in my opinion. That just eked a flop to me.
Yeah, it's a shame that it came to that, and obviously it's the outcome may still have been exactly the same regardless. LSU's been one of the best teams and best programs in the country for a number of years now, but to have that overshadow the ending of the College World Series is a shame, not only for LSU, but for Coastal Carolina as well.
Yeah, and it was a great first game too. That was a tremendous pitcher's duel, but certainly a lot of fun there. Sticking on the topic of baseball, so you just had a column recently in the Daytona Beach News Journal where you tracked alumni of the Daytona Tortugas in honor of their 10th anniversary. That was a pretty interesting read, and kind kind of highlight some of the players that were on that list that people may not have thought played in Daytona.
Well, when I set out to do it, we didn't know whether at first to do just a starting lineup and with a pitcher, just pick a starting 9 or a 10, I guess, with a designated hitter. I decided to be ambitious because it was 10 years of baseball, and then I realized very quickly, like, the talent pool is a little shallower than I expected it to be. But that said, the top end of it is very, very good. Ellie De La Cruz is one of the most exciting players in baseball, shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds. TJ Friedel is a on-base machine, leadoff hitter for the Reds. Tyler Stevenson made it up there as well. He's been, he hit 19 home runs last year. Is a good, solid power hitting catcher. And then the pitchers, I think the bullpen was a strength of that team. If you were to look through it, you got no real defined closer, but the 8 players that I picked had combined for 45 career major league saves. That's, kind of a committee approach. Some quality arms in there. The top 2 of the rotation, Andrew Abbott and Tyler Malley, have had very good seasons this year as well. So it's been exciting. It was exciting to go through. I will say that the restructure and reorganization of minor league baseball has been to the Tortugas' detriment. They used to be a high A affiliate of the Reds, and now they are the A-ball affiliate, which doesn't sound like a big drop-off. But when you're talking about the top-end prospects, especially guys coming out of college, a lot of times they skip that first level of the big league. So you're seeing players right now that are 18 and 19 years old in Daytona, as opposed to seeing guys that are between the ages of 20 to 22. And that area of development is critical. And you're more likely to see future major leaguers from the latter than the former. They got a long way to go when you're, a teenager still. So I think that's kind of where down the road you hope to see more guys break through. But if you're still getting college bats, college arms, they may just outright skip straight to high A or even double A if they're really good.
Yeah. So the guys that would make it from Daytona, they would have to be grinders, essentially, right? To go through each step of the minor league level to get there, probably.
It's a combination not only of talent, but also how much an organization has invested in you. If you're taken in the first 5 rounds and a team spent, 7 figures on your signing bonus, then they're going to give you a lot more leeway to grow out of bad habits and trends and things like that than you would be if you're taken near the end of the draft or a team invests $10,000 as a free agent signing. So, I think you not only have to be really, really good to get there and put your dues in potentially for 3 or 4, maybe even longer years, but also it's got to be a reward of the faith that the Reds or other organizations may show along the way.
Yeah, I'd say I love, watched a lot of minor league baseball when I was a kid growing up, and obviously Orlando had a team for many, many years that supported backfilled the Minnesota Twins title teams, and I got to see in West Virginia, I got to see Cal Ripken play in a minor league game. It's kind of cool when you can kind of go back and look at when you say I saw these guys win. In their development, it's really a neat aspect, and minor league baseball environments are a hoot. I'm actually going to go to a Daytona game here towards the end of July.
I spent Father's Day in Dunedin. Unfortunately, it rained 4.5 innings into a doubleheader, and they never got back on the field. But I love minor league baseball. I have a hat collection. I've got about a half dozen of them. I've got. My favorite one personally is my Kannapolis Cannonballers hat. But you have to go to a game to get the hat. I don't just collect cool hats. I have to go to the game and then feel as though I've accomplished something by buying the hat as well.
And you're supporting the team directly, which is
yes,
yes, which is really good stuff. So Chris, you're the first guest I've had that actually was on the program from a sports venue before a big event. So you're breaking new ground here. So you've been covering the FIFA Club World Cup. What has been your impressions of this tournament?
I think it's a couple of things. So I went to I went as a fan to go see the Benfica game against Auckland City, and it was very, it was a pretty lively atmosphere for a noon kickoff in Orlando. Even though there were about 7,000 fans in there, Benfica's support traveled, and Auckland, for almost 50 minutes of that game kept it scoreless. Their goalkeeper had a terrific day. It ended up being 6-1, and then Auckland, to their credit, ended up getting a draw earlier today to go home with something on the board. So kudos to them to rebound from a 10-0 loss to Bayern and then get a point against a mega club in Argentina like Boca Juniors is not nothing is not nothing at all. It's quite something to be proud of for a team in Auckland that's semi-pro. It's like there's amateurs on the team. On the whole, it's interesting. I think it's definitely an improved format over what they had. It makes it more prestigious. It makes it feel like it's a bigger deal. The temperatures and the game times have been brutal, though. And you're also this should be the off season for these teams. A lot of the teams in Europe, at least, right? Like they finished a 50, 60 game club season, and usually they, is their vacation, is their time to rest, unless it's international duty. So I'm not sensing yet that it's quite the most competitive thing. That maybe that will change as we get deeper into the tournament. To the fans' relief, we have seen pretty strong lineups. We haven't seen a lot of preseason-esque lineup rotation as you would for maybe other events that have come abroad to the United States over the years. So there's that. But it's also a good first impression for some of the fans to see new players. Like the transfer window was opened just before the Club World Cup and shut again to allow for teams to add to their rosters. So for Manchester City, they got to bring in 3 new signings, and Ryan Cherky, who they just signed, scored his first goal for the club. Chelsea's got their new striker, Liam Delap from Ipswich. So it's kind of a good look to the future too. I think it's a fun tournament, but I think also it definitely raises some concerns about how these guys are going to adapt to the World Cup next year with the temperatures and how insanely hot it's been everywhere.
Yeah, it has been. How the crowd's been, attendance wise?
Well, the first game was not exactly the 2 biggest clubs you'll find on planet Earth, between Ulsan HD out of South Korea and Mamelodi Sundowns out of South Africa. So I think at one point there was a tweet that had circulated where the crowd on hand was around 100. But the second game was, again, about quarter full, I'd say. And that also takes into account that there was a rain delay in the middle of that game. This should be a much better attended game. Flamengo's got a huge fan base. Brazilian football fans travel far and wide to go see their teams. If you watched the game a couple nights ago as well, between River Plate from Argentina and Monterrey from Mexico in the Rose Bowl, that was a great atmosphere, great venue, pretty well full. Those supporters, those fan bases are really treating this like an opportunity to puff their chest and to prove that they belong among the biggest clubs in the world. You're seeing Brazil's teams in particular really succeed here in this tournament. And I think on the whole, the game to watch in Orlando for sure will be Thursday afternoon, 3:00 here at Camping World, when Manchester City faces Juventus, 2 of the biggest teams on the planet.
Yeah, of course. You'll be providing full coverage on those, I presume, as well.
I will be here Thursday, yes.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I noticed today, so I work downtown right off of Central Boulevard. So, of course, at Garland, the road is blocked going towards the stadium. So that's always the first indicator of, okay, the city is expecting a very good crowd tonight.
Yeah, I think, sure, you look at Thursday, I would expect this place to be pretty packed. I don't know if it'll hit quite the 60,000 number, considering it's 3:00 on a Thursday. But I will say that in terms of a one-off, if you're a soccer fan, I mean, those 2 rosters, according to Transfermarkt, are worth approximately $1.7 billion worth of players. So you're not going to find a higher level game around until honestly, I don't know. I was going to say the World Cup, but they're not here next year, sadly. They're not. Orlando's not a host site.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we have a lot of soccer fans in my office. It'll be the challenge to keep them in the office come Thursday afternoon. I got a feeling as that goes
Right.
along. All right, Chris Boyle, thank you so much for hopping on the show and just talking in general about sports. And of course, you may want to do some blatant plugs for your work with the Daytona Beach News Journal. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. I mean, all of our stories are going to be found at news-journalonline.com. We cover a wide range of topics. UCF has been a relative new addition to our portfolio over the last few years. We obviously cover NASCAR very hard, being at the World Center of Racing. We got a big race coming up in a couple of months, right before the playoffs kick in, and then we have our local high schools, and we have partnerships throughout the state of Florida as well with our network. We have reporters up in Gainesville, down to the Dolphins, the Jaguars. So it's a wide variety of things you can find on our website. On social media, Twitter, you're at Chris Boyle DBNJ. And then for our coverage of the Club World Cup, also check out ProSoccerWire.com. It's a Gannett-owned property.
Outstanding stuff, Chris, and thanks for joining us from Camping World.
Thanks for having me.